So hi, Sunil. Hi, Kaustubh. Welcome to
Hi.
this, and thank you for accepting this in such short notice. Here's in context of the upcoming ADHM race, and I'm sure over the many years that ADHM has been organized, it, today is a completely different ADHM. Right? I mean, when I say today, not because of the year, but the 10 years running has changed across the country. Right? I'm sure across the world, but in India, it's like it's a whole different world now, right? So, which has led us to a lot of things. People want to know what to do for running, how do you train, how do you not train, karna kya hai, everything that it comes with being a runner, right? And the more we train, the more questions we have, usually. Uh, so, we'd like you to take us through all this, help us through how to figure it out. Let's start off with a little bit about each of you, from yourself, of course, and then we'll get into the actual discussion of the training, the nutrition, hydration, everything that we want to talk
Sunil, you go.
about. Well, let's start with Kaustubh.
Or I will start. Um, so, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Kaustubh Radkar. I finished the full Ironman 25 times. I was the fastest Indian at Comrades Marathon in 2016, although a lot of people don't consider me to be a runner. I was a former national swimming champion, and that's how my fitness journey started way back in 1992. Currently, I own Rat Strong Coaching, and I was India's first Ironman certified coach. And just last month, I got certified by the International Olympic Committee about drugs in sports.
Sunil, you're on mute though. Okay.
No, yeah. I mean, of course, I mean, everybody knows Kaustubh Radkar, so actually he doesn't need an introduction. I might need an introduction, but
I think very few people know Kaustubh Radkar outside of his ultra running clothes.
so yeah, so I was working for Microsoft before I quit Microsoft and started this coaching journey of mine. And I've learned a lot from Kaustubh Radkar because I've done a lot of camps together with him. And, I love the way he leads his team. His vision is really inspiring. I still remember he wanted 100 Indian Ironmans crossing the finish line. And I think that's a great dream. And he's been one of the forefront coaches and athletes in terms of, training a lot of triathletes and inspiring a lot of Indians across, India and even abroad. And for that matter, my introduction is quite small in front of him. But yeah, my passion is it really lies in, trying to really understand the basics of training and trying to be the best version of myself every time. And I keep learning from all of us. The mistakes that we do, others do, I just try to learn, grasp, and that's just made me wiser. So overall, I'm really happy that I'm able to contribute in a way to the triathlon community and to the larger running community overall.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So thanks for that intro, both of you. So, and you, I don't know what to say. Like, I admire you guys. I'd like to do something that you maybe 1/10 of what you guys do in terms of the actual distances. Big dream. Let's figure out when we reach there. But let's get on to the actual core of this discussion as to how you want to get there, the process of getting there. So now that we have the races, no, we don't really have the races per se, but the virtual part of them have started for good measure. Hopefully, we get to the real ones also. But the big challenge when we start is how do we get there as runners, right? What are the aspects we need to be worried about, we need to be caring about when we are getting into these kind of things? Like anything above 10K, in my opinion, is a long distance. Again, it depends on who's running it, but for a general populace, is long distance. We specifically talk about half marathons and full marathons in this case, but how do we prepare for it? And what are the aspects we need to be worried about? Kaustubh, again, starting from you.
Yeah, I think first thing first, create yourself a solid training plan. and don't be in a rush. I think that's my number one advice to anyone. Uh, a half marathon or a full marathon, obviously, you should give yourself a good, 20 to 24 weeks at the minimum. And I think the mistake people make is that they graduate too fast. They run maybe 10K, and then all of a sudden the social media bug bites them that they want that half marathon finisher medal, and they give themselves maybe 4 weeks or 5 weeks. And the same thing happens with a full marathon, that people run 1 or 2 halves and then they want to graduate to the full. And that's become a very, very unfortunate common theme in India. So my number one advice is to start slow, and gradually build. Even if you do one half a year and then graduate to a full the next year, I mean, you're only racing against yourself. So take it slow, and that way you'll enjoy the process and you'll be a runner long term.
Okay. Sunil.
Yeah, so I like to break this question into two parts basically. First part being how to start, and the second part is how do I know whether I'm ready for the next distance, right? So the basic thing that we need to focus, whenever we want to start, is to focus on your form and posture.
Okay.
And I think that's the biggest missing part that I always seen amongst people who approach me for coaching, is that they just want to start off and reach the goal as soon as possible. And that's not the realistic approach, because because of our lifestyle, the way we sit, the way we do things on a day-to-day basis is so corrupted in a way, because of our mobiles, of our lifestyle, eating habits, sitting habits is changed a lot, and you can't expect to have that posture and go into running and increase your miles or distance. So first is to work on your form and posture, and that takes a lot of time. So whenever people come to me, I first have to downgrade their goals and say, boss, first of all, you're not going to I'm not promising you that you will run a half marathon or an Ironman distance in 6 months, or whatever it is. It's going to be working on your form, because injury free is the most important aspect. And so that's the first thing. And once we are focused and we set the form right, the posture right, and then we move on to the distances. And how do we prepare for distances is also, you break down those things into three parts basically. Suppose you are doing a 10K and you want to know whether you're prepared now to do a 21K. So basically you need to have a certain criteria. At least you should be able to do a 10K in 1 hour 10 minutes, minimum. Between 1 hour 10 minutes to 1 hour 15, if you're able to do, then I think you are well to do enough train for 21K. Second thing what I would like to talk about is the mileage, the weekly mileage that you're clocking. It's important that for doing a 21K distance, you need to clock a minimum average of 30 kilometers a week at least. So that way your body is set for a 21K. Always train more than the distance, so that when you actually hit the distance, you're not uncomfortable. And same thing goes with marathon distance. If you're aiming to do a marathon, make sure that you are able to do a half marathon at least in 2 hours 15 to 2 hours 30. Basic criteria. So whenever my trainees ask me, can I do a marathon, I first say, what is your half marathon timing? If it is not within that range, it doesn't make sense, because there's no point in doing a death march at the end of the race. You have to finish at least by in 5:15 or 5:30. No point in finishing 6 hours, just 5 minutes or 10 minutes before the cutoff of a marathon, right? And also, and we need to make sure that the weekly mileage for training a marathon is anywhere between 50 to 60 kilometers, so that your body is used to that distance at least on a weekly basis. So
One.
sorry, I still have one more criteria
Sure.
to talk
Sure.
about.
Please go ahead.
And the third criteria is basically, you need to have the time and the plan for doing this, and you have to be consistent in your training. There's no point in training in for 1 week beautifully and the next week zero training, or minimal training. So consistency in your training, having a plan in place like Kaustubh sir said, and making sure, you are targeting those distances are very important. Sorry,
Okay.
yes.
So from both of you, the one thing that you are talking about is understand where you are today, right? And are you ready for it? Now, the challenge that as I don't even want to call myself an amateur runner, like I'm a casual runner, right? Uh, is that I personally, even a few years ago, used to believe running mein kya hai? Anybody can run. We don't need a coach. This is the belief with which we came, and unfortunately, I mean, I know now better than that. But that is the situation, right? The country, the coaching infrastructure, or the coaching, um, what do you call it? Availability of good coaches is not, in my opinion, not that great, right? Uh, Not everybody will find the two of you to get trained, right? So, in that aspect, what do you think are the available resources for people to get, right? And I don't want to talk about this in detail, but it's a good information for people to say, okay, acha, before I get to Kaustubh or before I get to Sunil or before what is it I can do? Kaustubh, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally get it that not everyone wants a coach or has the time or the financial bandwidth to have a coach, and that's completely okay. But at the end of the day, then you need to find some structure for you.
True.
And that structure can come in multiple forms. Either join a running group. A lot of cities have running groups, or download a plan off the internet. Just be very cautious that you don't overestimate yourself. I mean,
True.
Hal Higdon is a great resource. Matt Fitzgerald is another great resource, and they have tons of plans on the web. Plus, they have YouTube stuff that someone can go to. At the end of the day, having a coach will make you accountable, right? So there is someone
Of course.
checking up on you,
Obviously, that's
and
the best thing
that's
to
the
have,
biggest
right?
difference. So and there are people who are very committed and they don't need a coach, but that's a very tiny percent.
Not many of us, yeah.
If neither of them work, and I know athletes who have that problem, that they don't necessarily have a running group, try and find someone, at least one person who will keep you accountable, and vice versa, you will keep that person accountable. So these three, any of these strategies could be applicable to you.
Anything you want to add to that, Sunil? You're mute.
Yeah. So no, I think what Kaustubh touched upon are very valid points, and I personally feel that what extra I can add is, listen to your body. First of all, you need to be receptive, understand what your body is telling you. Most of the times, people just push themselves and they overtrain, and that causes a lot of injury. And people do not pace themselves properly. When you're running in a group specifically, or when you're running with other friends of yours, I have personally seen that people just push themselves without really understanding, whether their body is ready for it or not, and then they end up getting injured. So that is a drawback. And listening to your body and making sure that you understand your body requirements like nutrition, hydration, and all these are very important things. And for a self-coached individual, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of tasks. I'm not saying it's not possible, but yes, you will go through the process of ups and downs, failures, and then you'll find your way. But then, that's a long way.
If you find your way eventually, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get to the actual, in the sense, the details of each of the things you're talking about when it comes to running, right? Whether it's a nutrition, whether it's a hydration, whether it's a training, let's start with the nutrition. I'm starting from there because I'm assuming most of us come from backgrounds because of the lifestyle where we end up with bad nutrition. So let's start with that one. And let me start with Sunil this time and say, okay, let us know, how do we figure out whether we are following good nutrition, or what in your opinion is the right nutrition? You're on mute again.
Yeah. So basically, nutrition is a very simple aspect that's made complicated. What you need to do is, when you're training for your races, or when you're training for your long runs, may have sure you have a pre-workout meal that's very simple. When I say simple, means It does not have any processed carbs. It does not have a lot of fiber or anything in it. A simple thing like curd, banana and honey. It's a perfect pre-workout meal. You don't have to make it too complicated. And for the run also, I'm not a big fan of gels. I basically feel hydration should be good enough for you. And training with a lower heart rate will enable fat oxidation, which means it will enable your body to burn more fat rather than use your calories for fuel. So that way your calorie requirement reduces a lot. So um, that way when you train on your training days with specific type of nutrition, make sure you're hydrating yourself well. Then during race day it becomes far more simpler. What's more important is to measure your weight before you work out and measure your weight after you work out, and then try to find out what's your weight loss. If it is more than 3%, then I think you need to up your hydration, or your nutrition if you feel. And also there are certain parameters you need to set to understand exactly where you need to improve on. So for example, muscle fatigue. So when you finish your long run, if you're going slower at the end of the last half an hour or 1 hour, you became slower. What was the reason? Was it because your heart rate was high? Was it because of muscle fatigue? Was it because of your temperature was high, or you're having some pain? So these are the questions you need to ask yourself. And the moment you ask yourself these questions, you will understand what your limiters are. Once you understand your limiters, then you can add come up with solutions to it. Muscle fatigue made me, okay, maybe you need to do more distance, or maybe you need to do some kind of strength training. If your joints are hurting, or if you feel that there's a pain which is not subsiding, then it's a form issue, so you need to work on your form. If your heart rate is going up and it's not coming down, then definitely it is a case of poor hydration or body cooling mechanism. You need to make sure that you cool your body, or make sure how you get your heart rate down. It could be channelizing your breathing pattern a little better. So these are a few factors that you keep on doing in your training, and you realize this, and then you can actually come across a proper nutrition and hydration plan for your race day, and then have a successful race.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Sunil and me have somewhat similar but somewhat different views on this, and that's why he's laughing about it. Again, the banana is obviously a great option. Granola is a great option. This is again breakfast. Try to avoid any fiber or protein. Your pre-workout meal. Sunil brought out curd. A lot of people have black coffee. Just make sure you don't have a sensitive tummy. Otherwise, it's going to be a nightmare on the run. You better know where the portaloos are. So again, it's a lot of learning. And everyone is different. You may have to try a few things and figure out what works for you. You will also realize over a period of time, one thing that used to work for you is not working for you anymore. And I'm a great example of that I used to have black coffee before my run, but it does not sit well with me anymore. I feel acidic. So I've stopped having anything realistically. I maybe have half a banana, and that's about it, half an hour before.
This is
the one thing,
generic run or the race that you're talking about?
My workout days.
Okay, got it.
This is my workout days. Again, I mean, being a triathlete, I'm working out 6 days a week, and even my rest day, I'm doing an active recovery. So there's really no day off per se, you can say. Just that the intensity just varies week on week basis. During the run, again, I think you need to feed your glycogen storages. There's a lot of debate if your glycogen will last 50 minutes or it will last an hour and a half. Again, right. Sunil brought out a great point about fat oxidation, but unfortunately, 90% of the athletes don't follow that. So we'll probably touch heart rate based training later on in this segment, but for the everyday athlete, you need to be eating and drinking roughly every 15 to 20 minutes. And most parts of India are now hot and humid, regardless of the months. Unfortunately, right. That's the world we live in. So any exercise under 1 hour, you're okay to only have water. But anything above, I would say 1 hour, you need some electrolyte element in it. Again, based on the city where you are, you may need not just electrolyte, but a salt element with it. And obviously you will need carbs for the duration of your run. And the simplest way to get them is via a gel. Although a lot of people do carry, potatoes, dates, or even bananas, cut bananas. So again, same thing, figure out what works for you. Something may work better for you than others, but you need to be sipping every 15 minutes. So at least a few gulps of water. That way you're never behind your hydration. And you need to be eating anything, roughly every 20 to 30 minutes. So if you have a small bite every 20 to 30 minutes, you will never get hungry. And the number one rule I tell all my athletes, and Sunil, I know you will agree, is if you ever get thirsty or you get hungry during your workout, whether it's swim, bike, run, and run, obviously, it's too late. That means your brain has already processed that. So if you're feeling thirsty, you're feeling hungry, that means you should have had that drink or food about 10 to 15 minutes before.
Okay, sounds great. So again, like you said, thought processes are different, but the general thing is make sure you figure out what it is and whether you want to go with the unprocessed, no gel mindset, or you eat the gels or whatever it is, but figure out what it is, what is the right amount for yourself while you go onto the run, right? Now, getting more onto the training aspect of it, like Sunil touched about it a little bit, saying, okay, these were the number of weeks you need to do a half marathon or for a full marathon. I think what would also help people is, okay, what is training? Most of us would just think, okay, if I have to run a half marathon, I have to run every day. That's it. There's nothing else required. But I'm sure we are missing a lot of things, whether you have to strengthen it or flexibility or whatever, we are missing it. What is it that you think should be a generic half marathon or a marathon training plan? When I say a weekly plan, let's start with Kaustubh.
Yeah, for a half marathon, you're more than likely running at least 4 days a week. That's more than enough. Like Sunil said, you want to build up that number close to 21 kilometers so that your body is adapted to running that distance. You know how it exactly feels. But regardless, you're training for a 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathon, and ultra, you need to add some variant of strength training. And unfortunately, 90% of even my athletes, I have to literally chase them that, have you done your strength training? And strength training doesn't necessarily mean you should go to the gym and pound out weights. You can do simple body weight exercises, use tools that you can use anywhere, such as TheraBands, your jumping ropes, TheraTubes. But some element of strength training is needed. It's going to make you stronger and faster, obviously, but more importantly, it's going to keep you injury free. And that holds even more when you're training for a full marathon, because like Sunil said, you're putting in anywhere between 60 to 80 kilometers, and that's a lot of poundage for your joints and your cartilages. So for a full marathon, your minimum runs are at least 5, and if you can stretch it to 6, that's a great number to have. One caveat is that for a full marathon, understand that you may want to run 32 to 34 kilometers, maybe 3 times max in that training cycle of 20 to 24 weeks. This is a common mistake that people feel 2 weeks before the event, I should run 42 kilometers. That's a lot of time on your legs. You will not recover in time. And um, like Sunil said, trust your body, but respect your body. If your body is telling you something's aching and paining, it's sending you a signal, I need a break. Give it the rest it deserves. Do not go crazy just because your coach or your training plan calls for a run. A good coach will actually appreciate an athlete who backs off and says, hey coach, there was something wrong. It was aching and paining. I did not run today.
Okay, sounds good. Sunil.
I think Kaustubh covered some really great points. Just a few additions that I would like to add on is try to do your race pace training also in your training runs. So that will also help to understand your pace, whether you're able to sustain. So for example, if you are doing a 21-kilometer run, your long runs have at least 10 minutes race pace and 5 times, and try to build it up as much as possible, going up to at least 40 to 45 minutes of race pace intensity for your 21K, so that you understand whether you're able to sustain that distance or not, and what is your hydration and nutrition requirement. So training for race pace is also very important aspect, and always follow a linear method of progression in your training. So it should not be like you increase the distance and go straight up. There will be recovery weeks, and then you go up, then you recover again. So if you have a very sinusoidal training plan, what's going to happen is you're going to let your body recover and without getting injured, and again improve your performance. So those things are there. Of course, speed workouts and long runs. So you may have a mixture of healthy mixture of all of these things in place, and also some race specific runs during a long runs. You'll be set for a good strong finish for the run.
That's great. Sunil, I'll carry off from what some of the points you brought out, and Kaustubh help me or help all of us understand this. The two aspects he spoke about. Number one, you have to train at your race pace. The biggest challenge for me or for most of the runners is, what is my race pace? I do not know. How do I get to it? Okay. Second thing is, a lot of us, and truly pointed out, is when I say I go for a 21K, my mileage is just increasing linearly. The fact of thinking about recovery is not common knowledge, right? The fact that I need to pound my muscles and also let them recover. Can you help figure out, or at least talk about those two aspects? Kaustubh, please.
Yeah, I'll touch upon recovery first because that's one of my favorite topics. Is that you should have either a 2:1 or a 3:1 model where you build your mileage for 2 weeks, and then the third week is recovery. And that recovery week does not mean that you necessarily decrease the mileage, but you run at very, very low intensities. So even if, let's say I'm training for a 4-hour marathon, that's like a 540 pace, that 537 pace I have to maintain. My recovery runs will be at least a minute 15 slower per kilometer. So I'm looking at a 630 to 645 pace on that recovery week. And this is one of the major mistakes people make. And when I give people easy runs, the common question I get is, what is my pace for an easy run? And my simple answer is, easy is easy. And easy today will not necessarily be easy tomorrow. When you wake up, you may feel tired and fatigued, and that easy is going to be even slower than what you have given yourself to be. The first question, obviously, now the second question I'm taking is, how do I set my target? And the issue is, a lot of people just overestimate that they're bit by this 90-minute half marathon or a sub-2 half marathon. They have created this model in their head that they want to achieve. First things first, figure out your time for a 5K and then build your plan based on that. If you can run a 5K at X pace, then you can have a training plan that will get you to a half marathon. And like Sunil said, a lot of athletes do not do race specific training. They just haphazardly run the distances, and then on race day they say, oh, I was able to do it for the first 8K, but then I faded. That means you were not ready to run that pace. So try it in your workouts. When you do the speed workouts, do them a little faster than race pace. Your tempo is roughly 10 seconds faster than your race pace, and see if you can hold that tempo for 14 to 16 kilometers. If you can do that successfully, you're more than ready for that race pace you have established.
Okay. So Sunil, getting from there, right? So we have set up a race pace, like you've done a 5K. We've calculated what my half marathon race pace could be, but it doesn't always. Mathematics doesn't work with life, right? My lifestyle could mess it up. So what are the things I should look out for when I say, okay, I'm trained? He said if you do 14K at your race pace plus 10, you probably set. But are there anything else I need to look out for to say, okay, this is not the pace I should be running?
Yeah. So basically, there are two, three factors that come in. First, like Kaustubh sir said, when you understand, you do a 5K, you understand your threshold pace, and then you can always say for a half marathon is going to be between 90 to 95% of your threshold pace is going to be a half marathon pace, and if you're able to stick to that, you're definitely going to do it. the second thing that plays a big factor in your race pace is also going to be the elevation and the temperature of your place which you're racing at. And sometimes it's always better that if in a humid environment or a hilly terrain, you need to dial back a little bit on your race pace. You cannot have the race pace which you would target on a flat surface. So you need to add those gradients and those temperature variances, and then say, okay, this temperature, if it is there, maybe -1%, or if you have the humidity -2% from your race pace, and then say, okay, this is going to be my realistic race pace. So arriving at that is not going to be difficult once you realize your threshold pace and you train at the race specific. And when I say race specificity, you need to, if there is you're running a hilly course, a hilly marathon or a hilly half marathon, make sure that you train for that elevation. Make sure that you train for that weather. If you're training in a cool environment and you want to simulate the weather, you can wear a jacket and run just to simulate that heat and environment. So, race specificity is very important to determine your race pace. And then once you're comfortable, then everything will fall in pace. And it's very simple to 90 to 95% is your half marathon pace. That's there. 80 to 90% is going to be your marathon pace. And it's not going to fluctuate so much, and what I would suggest is, another thing is, break down your 21K, break down your 40K into smaller milestones. You could break it down, you break down 21K into 3 parts or 4 parts, and you can go for a positive split or a negative split. Negative split is slightly more easier in a half marathon than a full marathon. You might want to start at a easier pace in the beginning, increase your pace in the middle, and maybe the last part you might want to do a positive split by going a little slower and all that. So that will ensure that, okay, you can meet your target. So how you pace throughout the race is also going to matter, right? So you need to make sure you break it down to smaller milestones and achievable ones, and then say, okay, this pace, this phase and all that. And even for elevation, you can also plan it out. If you know if you have the GPX file, or the elevation of the route, you can also plan out, okay, first half is a hilly course, so I'm going to target at this pace, and the next half I'll improve on my pace. So that way, it becomes fairly simple. It's not too complicated to do that.
Okay. So just a minute. I think this part should probably be getting cut because I'm reading my book. Just want to make sure I don't miss anything. So, is there anything that people, again, I'm asking this question, but I kind of answering it myself, is, see, now we are in an unfortunate year, so to say, where first thing, for a large part of the year, most people couldn't really train. And now that people have been able to train a little bit and we're able to do some runs, in this case, a virtual run, in a way, it's a good thing, right? You're running in the place that you're training. But the difference here is, like, you're trying to race, but there's no context, right? There's nobody running next to you. So are there things that you need to be careful about, right? So, or something you need to be doing to enjoy that? It's not easy to enjoy a race all by yourself. Should I ask? Please ask Kaustubh. Please go ahead.
Yeah, virtual running has its own challenges. Obviously, number one is traffic. Not everyone has the luxury of running inside parks.
True.
So choose your course wisely. I'll give you my example. I did the virtual London on October 4th, and I chose a 5-kilometer loop, and I did that 8 times, and everyone around me was like, why are you doing this? But I did it because I knew there was no traffic, and I could set up my aid stations. I had my aid stations on my car. It made life very, very easy. So figure out how often you need your supplies. Figure out your route, and that's the best way to go around about it. Third thing is, when will you start? Will you start early morning? Then again, you have to consider safety, especially for women. The later you start, obviously it's going to get hot and humid, and the air quality is going to get worse. So take all of these factors into consideration, and then arrive at, okay, do I really want to push this race? I'm not really going to get a podium or something like that, why not then not add any pressure on me, just enjoy this, and maybe try a negative split, maybe try something you have not really done and challenge yourself that way.
Okay, Sunil, anything?
I think the best way, in my trainees also face the same challenge as to how do I keep them motivated to train. The basic problem was when the lockdown happened, many of my trainees, many people lost their motivation to train itself because there was no such races happening, there was no such thing happening. And then virtual marathons started coming and people were a little bit excited about it. The best thing I would suggest to do is to visualize. A lot of visualization techniques help. And it's the virtual marathon actually is a great way to improve on your mental strength, how to go and persist with it, even though there is nobody to cheer you, there's no runners with you, it's you. And many a times I have also visualized, I always visualize whenever I'm running, even in BHL or any other place, I just visualize I'm running, a certain route. And I'm chasing somebody, I'm trying to do something, and it really excites. So one thing is, of course, visualization. Second thing is try to make it simpler, like how Kaustubh said, break it down into 5 kilometers each where it is safer. So you get that break, you can refresh yourself and reset your mind. So that's the only way you can actually move forward. And of course, I would not suggest you all to listen to music and run because it could be dangerous. And you have to be cognizant about what's happening on your surroundings. You never know which traffic is coming from where, and what's going to happen. But yes, these are the things I would suggest.
Okay, so that's actually when I asked that question, I did not really think about if I was thinking about people not being there, but I totally forgot about the fact that there's nobody to support me during that 21K, and Kaustubh rightly brought it up. And of course, which means that the route they choose or we choose needs to be so much more important. Can I place my stuff there? Is it safe for me to put things around and leave them? Everything. That's awesome. All the things that we can learn from people, especially good trainers like you, is awesome. So to end this discussion, because of what is the one thing you want to close this with for a message to the runners who want to do the ADHM this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'll close it by saying, this year has been a tough year for everyone. A lot of your events have got cancelled, and like Sunil said, a lot of people lost motivation. But my number one, my takeaway should be that look at it as if it's an investment in your health and in your immunity. Don't be in a rush to come out and do every single virtual event that comes about. Choose wisely, just as if you were to choose your races, and enjoy the process, because we have a long road ahead. We do not know when the end of the tunnel is going to be. So why put unnecessary stress on yourself? Work on yourself, work on your weaknesses. We still have ample time to do strength training, to do yoga, to do pranayam, to do meditation, do visualization. It is something that every one of us, I mean, Sunil and me, in your eyes and other people's eyes, may be great people or great coaches, great athletes, whatever that is. But I know, I have interacted with Sunil many times, that we have a lot of weaknesses, and I'm sure he's been working on his, and I've been working on mine as well.
Awesome. Sunil, to you.
Yeah, I think the virtual platform is a good platform for bringing the community together. What has happened is that people have something to look out for, and this pandemic has literally you know shaken the society so much that people want to go out and express themselves and have not been able to do so. And I think this is a great platform for people to express themselves, do something for the community, realize what you can contribute towards, and make sure that you do it in a way where you do not harm yourself or harm others, specifically. That's very important. And I really like the concept that we are doing some things where we are getting people together. The objective of any event is to get people together for a cause. And when that happens, I think it's a win-win situation for everyone, right? And that's the objective. And of course, touched on very very good valid points. Everybody has those weaknesses. Try to understand, build on those. It's time that you can do all these things when such situation is there. So yeah, go express yourself.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, man. And I ask everyone who's going to run this virtual marathon, be safe, be careful, take care of your health. I know I myself say a lot of times 2020 has been a bad year or whatever, but it's also a year which has told you, health is important. Just take care of yourself, right?
Yep,
So
absolutely.
thanks so much, Sunil. Thanks so much, Kaustubh, for this.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Chaitanya.
Thanks for
Thanks,
joining us. Thanks so much.
Radkar.
Yeah.
Kaustubh has been a great inspiration, and I just pinged him, and he said yes. And so it's very nice of you, Kaustubh, to just say yes.
Yeah, I mean,
thing and
as
really,
you know, I'm always available for the community. So
definitely.
it's a great
Thanks so
year
much.
that way that you're not traveling anywhere, so you're stuck at home.
It's good as a virtual travel, at least something to look at.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.